The Mining Indaba entered its second day in Cape Town today, and earlier CNBC Chief Editor Godfrey Mutizwa caught up with Marc Faber from Marc Faber Limited. He started by asking him about the impact of quantitative easing and the outlook for the global economy.
Recessions are a natural event in economic life. In other words, you go into an economic expansion, an excursion into prosperity, and then you go into an excursion in recession, and then it cleans the system. That's the function of a recession, to bankrupt the weak market participants and make the system more efficient. So to prevent it from happening causes later even bigger problems. And my argument is this: now we have expanded the balance sheet of the ECB, the Bank of Japan, the Bank of England, and the Federal Reserve endlessly. This will have an impact on prices in the world, not necessarily consumer prices in the United States and in Europe, but it has implications on wages, say in emerging economies, on food prices, on commodity prices, on the prices of art, on the prices of homes, on the price of stocks and bonds and so forth.
Yes,
it misallocates capital again, and it is likely to create another bubble.
For regions like Africa, where we know we are so dependent on commodities, and we are likely to see some of this misallocation of capital, the lost capital if you like, coming onto our shores.
Well, I think we had wonderful years for commodity markets over the last 12 years, specifically from 1999 to the summer of 2008, when most commodities peaked out. And from here onwards, the increase in commodity prices, if at all, will be far more muted, because commodity prices depend largely on the demand from China. Whether the US economy grows at 2% or not is irrelevant for commodity prices, because 70% of the economy in the US are services. And so you don't need a lot of commodities for services. But in the case of China, in the early phase of industrialization, the demand for commodities goes up a lot. But now the Chinese growth is slowing down, much more, in my view, than the statistics would show. And who knows, the housing market could have a more significant setback in China. We also have a credit bubble in China. And when this bursts, I think the outlook for commodity prices will not be particularly good. The other problem for the whole mining sector is the cost of mining has gone up a lot. It's very expensive to bring a mine on stream. Number two, we have in the world resource nationalism. If you have a mine, who should get what? The mining giant, Rio Tinto, BHP, Anglo-American, or the local people? And if you split it, and there's usually a split, but how do you split it? That everybody's happy and the shareholders are happy. This is another issue. And thirdly, I would be much more optimistic about Africa if there was not continuous interference by foreign governments in African affairs.
Foreign governments?
Foreign governments.
Not African governments?
Not African. The African is a special case. But the foreign governments, the French, the British, the Americans, they look at Africa as kind of their sphere of influence. And as you know, the Chinese have come into Africa, and for Africa, the Chinese have been very beneficial, because the Chinese, they come, and I've seen it in Cambodia, suddenly a bridge is built. The Chinese come and say, we're going to build a bridge. 6 months later, the bridge is built. The road is built. Maybe not the highest quality, but it's done. The Western countries come with the World Bank, the IMF, and all kind of NGOs, and they say, we're going to build the bridge. And then for 10 years, they do nothing, only planning and get big salaries. And
the consultants?
The consultants, everybody, and nothing gets done. That is the problem.
So what are you saying? Net, are you saying Africa has benefited from the arrival of the Chinese into the continent?
Enormously.
Or are we seeing here maybe what's not quite clear at the moment, perhaps long-term damage in the future?
I think it has benefited a lot, but it creates tensions Whenever commodity prices go up, it's because there are shortages. Most wars and geopolitical tensions arose over resources. This is a catalyst for tensions in the world. Oil from the Middle East, resources from Africa. And I look at the intervention in Libya. Okay, Gaddafi is maybe not the best leader in the world, but he's as good as American leaders, that I guarantee you. And so now they remove him. What do they have? What has improved? Is worse than before. Mali, who knows? There's also Western interest in mines in Mali. And the rebels, I don't know, I'm not in favor of the rebels. Sure. But maybe the rebels are freedom fighters and not rebels. So, you know, Mandela was also a terrorist before, as you know. And now he's perceived in a different light. Yeah. But at that time, he was perceived as a terrorist. Yeah. And so it's very difficult to play God in the world and to judge. And certainly the worst is always to interfere in other people's affairs. And that is the sickness of the Americans.